In this, I'm going to share with you a comparison of high-performing versus low-performing candidates in job interviews, or if you want me to put it in a slightly different format, is what interviewers aren't telling you but wish they could during a job interview. And these are observations also based on my role plays with various types of candidates. The first thing I like to understand here is that high-performing candidates score well on clarity of thought. Okay, or if you want to put it the other way around, which is probably even more interesting for many of you, is that low-performing candidates have unintelligible answers. All right, so early on when I was starting with coaching for behavioral interviews, I thought that the reason why I wasn't understanding people is because they came from a different domain, so they had other dynamics, other keywords, and whatnot. Now, with time, I realized that it wasn't actually my problem, but it was actually the candidate's problem that for them to convey the idea that they wanted to transmit in a language that the other side would understand, regardless of the role, or I should say specifically, the candidate should adapt their communication styles for the person they're interviewing with. And if you're suspecting that your English-speaking skills might play a role into this, I can confidently tell you that's not the case. It's not about English-speaking skills. It's about communication skills and scoring well on clarity of thought. This could easily make or break your show during phone screening rounds, where if people don't understand you, if they have a good pool of candidates, they might simply let you go on and then say, okay, but I didn't really like what you said, but that's it, let's move on. Okay, the second thing I'd like to talk about here, key difference between low-performing and high-performing interviewing candidates would be in the amount of time they take to communicate the idea they want to transmit. So it's a problem both if you use too short or too long answers. All right, so that advice of having 2 minute, 5 minute, or 10 minute, or 15-minute interview answers, that's primarily for training purposes. And yes, statistically speaking, I can tell you that the higher performing candidates tend to have longer than average interview answers. But this being said, you should make an educated guess, on how long it takes you to communicate the idea that you want to transmit in a way that, of course, you sell yourself as good as possible during a job interview. So, long story short, high-performing candidates choose the right length of their answers based on various factors, based on the idea that they want to transmit, their quality of the story. Maybe it's an incredibly good story, they might go for a bit longer. Maybe they also listen to what the interviewer has to say, some non-verbal signs even during the conversation, and adapt. Right, they adapt their style and the length of the answers. Not so high-performing candidates would rather template their answers into 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes thing, and would take this advice too strictly. Right. The third thing I'd like to talk about here would be low-performing candidates have a tendency to over-prepare on the cosmetics for a job interview. For example, you enjoy very much preparing your elevator pitch. You prepare even 3 elevator pitches, what you think would work best. You also like tuning up your CV for the purpose of showing it to your interviewer, and these sort of things. Well, what happens here is that I coach a countless number of people who haven't been updating their CVs in like 10 years, or candidates who don't use LinkedIn, or let's put it in a slightly different way here. If you over-prepare, if you prepare a great and amazing elevator pitch, and then you give a terrible answer to an interview question, the perception of your terrible answer will be far worse when compared to if you gave a normal elevator pitch and then you struggle to answer a technical question, for instance. So this is the dynamic. So if you create such contrasts within the job interviews, these things are memorable. So giving a wrong answer will be memorable, will be far more memorable if you have an amazing elevator pitch and you make a super strong first impression. Right? The other thing that's cosmetics when compared to job interviews, and in my experience that never works, is you focus on stuff such as the picture quality or having a great background or how to dress for success in job interviews and these sort of things. This has never been a predictor of success in my experience for job interviews, and therefore I believe you should also take into account, because there are various time sinks. Time sinks are silently killing your job interviews, because time is something that many candidates lack going into these job interviews as well. Right? The fourth thing I like to talk about here is that something I've been speaking quite a lot as of recently. I'm yet to see an example of someone getting a job with high-performing companies who used AI extensively. Okay, so furthermore, I'm still struggling to find a great use case for AI going into a job interview. Okay, and I've tried many, and I have thousands of people using those AI services. Honestly, it doesn't really work. Furthermore, as of recently, I've been told that some companies are specifically looking for signs of AI, for traces of AI in candidates' answers, using more advanced techniques than they would usually do. And for them, you're actually making their life far easier. Because if they spot that you reward your answers with AI, it's game over. It's as simple as that. So long story short, high-performing candidates, people who pass interviews, don't use AI. So to be clear here. Right, this was number 4. Number 5 here. This is during my coaching sessions. So during my coaching sessions, there are some recurring topics that come up with the candidates that are not really, I would say, understanding the levels of success in job interviews. One of them being they over-focus on insider information, on getting insider info, such as the seniority of the role or the level of the role that you're looking for. And basically, they're looking too much between the lines of the job description and about to get as much insider info about these companies. As of recently, I've heard something on the lines of, but then they asked me in the phone screen an Amazon question that was for L6, not for L5. So that was a first. I didn't know there were questions for L6 and L5 in Amazon interviews. So my point is here that spend your time wisely with these companies and understand it's far more about how you do in the interview, how you perform during the interview, far more than the seniority of the role and these sort of things. Also trying to impress with giving answers that are of different seniority than your actual, than the reality, will not really work, because that shows within these job interviews, and that might show in your original answer, might show in the follow-up, in the challenge questions and whatnot. So long story short, don't really stress too much on the fitting into a given role, seniority, or even within a company culture. So it's diverse people that make a great high-performing teams, not people that think the same way, right? So again, these are also things you should consider while preparing your job interview. Your time would be maybe better spent on preparing a story bank on role play than getting insider info for that specific company. And the last, but definitely not least thing I wanted to share with you is that I found a trend that low-performing candidates, or like anyone makes mistakes in these job interviews and preparing for the job interviews, and during role plays in particular. However, low-performing candidates make mistakes and never learn from them. Okay, so they make the same mistake over and over again. For example, jumping into answering questions, right, without having a bit of delay. So, for instance, I would roleplay with someone an interview question. They would give me their story reactively and say, yes, okay, this was a story. Is it your best story? Well, in retrospect, I would have had 2 better stories than this one. Okay, let's start with the next interview question. And then they jump again into answering the question. Yeah, in retrospect, I would have had a better. Okay, but why don't you, learn a little bit from your mistakes and, introduce a bit of delay, think twice before answering these questions. These sort of things. Also, with respect to AI features and those type of things on my website, I added warnings to people. Hey, this doesn't work. Forget it. This. So try to identify your mistakes, acknowledge them, and learn from them. There's even the failure questions in job interviews, and one of the reasons that you're getting asked those questions is for the learning. So I could easily tell you if you prepare the failure story by its learnings, because the more you focus on the learnings and how you grew from that experience, the more qualitative your answer to that interview question is. So this will be my 6 comparison between high and low performing candidates. I hope you found it useful, and thank you very much for watching.